But YOLO.
Wise man once said.
Wise man once said only YOLO once, right? You set?
Yeah.
I'm gonna move this thing out of the way. Oh yeah, shit. So I gotta kind of give you like. Yeah, I mean, if you need to move this thing, it's kind of the two things I always say before. If you need to move it, like shifting the chair, do whatever you gotta do.
Cool.
You're not gonna break this thing.
Yeah.
And then like this is probably too close, but this is probably too far.
Yeah.
So you just.
Is it directional? Does it matter? Like pointing it at me? Rather?
Yeah, like right there is pretty perfect.
Cool.
All right, my friend, let's do
it. Coffee sipping sounds.
Yeah, man, on the mic. So, thank you so much for coming to my home and joining me on my show.
I love it.
I thought I would kind of just start and teeing it off for you with a little bit of conversation we had before we went live. That when I moved to Nashville, a lot of the guests that I've had have been with the Entrepreneur Center in downtown Nashville, and you. I don't know exactly what your title is, but you basically like run the day-to-day operations there. And I wanted to kind of learn more specifically, like what the EC is about, what the mission statement there is, and like how you got involved too, because I have a feeling that you being a part of the Entrepreneur Center probably has an interesting backstory to it. So I'd like to learn about it.
Dude, yeah, for sure. So maybe it might be helpful from my mind just to go through it like with kind of my story of how I got there, and then we kind of talk about what the EC is about, what it does. So grew up in Kentucky. Went to school at Western Kentucky University. And during that, so backtrack, grew up in a small town right outside of Louisville. My best friend, Cody Hutchins, we had known each other since the first grade. Grew up together, kind of like the inseparable of like, super bad, the sort of like conundrum where they're like always together. And whenever they're separated, people are like, where's Cody or where's Jeremy? And so we were best buds. Cool. Yeah. And we were always kind of like tinkering with things when we were growing up, right? Or trying to make things or sell things. We would kind of sell candy bars out of our backpack in school, or try to make Lego creations and sell them to our friends or our friends' parents. And so we kind of always had that bone in us. It's like, how can we make and sell things and figure it out? So we both went to school at Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green, and we kind of started going on two separate paths. Cody was studying international business and Chinese, and I was actually studying film. So I kind of had a passion for video editing and was exploring what that path could look like. So by doing kind of separate things and getting involved in separate activities, we started to kind of drift apart in school. And so by the time we hit about late into junior year, we had caught up with each other, and we were like, I don't even really know you anymore. It's crazy how like you can grow up best friends, and then all of a sudden you don't really know someone if you don't spend that much time with them. And so we kind of sat down and kind of had like a heart to heart. We're like, we got to figure out a way to stay in each other's lives after college, because if it continues this path when we graduate, we'll likely not be friends. Right. So we started just meeting up at a coffee shop in town and started to kick around like what that could look like. And the sole goal was like, how can we stay friends? Like, how can we continue to have something that like bonds us or unites us? And so after a lot of conversations and kind of talking about how we always really liked starting things and building things when we were younger, we're like, what if we started a business? Like that could be this like third thing that we both service that we can keep each other accountable with and continue to stay in each other's lives. So Cody had done a lot of traveling in school, and I had done some like mission trips and different things growing up. And we had always come back, and we'd always have bracelets on that kind of told the story of where we were. And I would always like, if I saw a unique bracelet, you kind of would generally ask someone about it and say like, what does that mean? And you would kind of like have a story like, oh, I got this when I was in Ecuador or whatever it might be. And it was a cool way to learn about someone. And so we kicked around that idea of like, how can we connect people? How can we spark conversation with a product? And so I had started taking some entrepreneurial classes because I started to kind of like understand a little bit more about what that meant. And Cody was clearly full-fledged business school. And so we came up with this idea together for a bracelet that had a part that you could trade, a part that you could keep. And it would be all about sparking conversations and connecting people. And so we just kind of said, okay, like, let's go for this. Let's try to do it. At the time I was doing like a venture planning course in school. And so I was able to, like, it was like the one time I was like able to, I literally like taking a class from school. Right. And we like put the formula into it and started to figure out like, what do we need for marketing? What do we need for actual product design? What are the margins? Like asking ourselves these real questions that I was learning about in school was like a weird thing. And so we got to this point where we're like, okay, this is awesome. Like we have these sketches and we think we could make this thing. And with Cody knowing Chinese and studying international business, we had kind of landed some connections with the manufacturer that said, exactly, it's like, we could do this, which is really tough to find in America on a college student budget. Right.
Absolutely.
So that was the crux that was like the part where we were like, man, like we don't know. And so we started applying to pitch competitions and business plan competitions in school, and we're able to place in a couple of those. And that gave us the initial capital to actually make the prototypes, make the designs, and kind of go forward with it. Like a few $1,000s in the bank. It's really all we needed. It's not like we needed a $100,000 investment. We just wanted to prove, like, could this thing actually work? And so we did. And that was like right when we were graduating. We got that money. We started making the prototypes. And this is a long phase because we're both students and trying to figure it out. And so we graduate, and Cody moves to China. He gets a job at internet, like he's a super smart guy. And so he's working for a farming agriculture company, sort of like trying to make sure the animals are eating healthy. And so really amazing opportunity. Goes over there, and I am still in Bowling Green, where I went to school, kind of finishing up my lease and the job. And so that was right at the time when we were getting really excited about this sort of entrepreneurial endeavor. And so when I was graduating, man, like I studied film, and I quickly realized that like the idea of working in a dark room for 10 hours a day, though I loved the process of it, just maybe wasn't like career-wise what I had envisioned it would become. And so I was still applying for a lot of like marketing agencies and video production houses in Nashville specifically. And the reason Nashville is because, of course, it's growing. Of course, there's like a ton of opportunity, and it was really close to where I went to school and to where my family is. And so it was kind of like the perfect storm of a potential place to move.
Of course.
So I was applying for those jobs, but at the same time I was like, man, like this whole process has been super fun. And though we're not even near a place where I could just like do this full time, maybe working for a startup would be really cool. And so I just honestly kind of blindly or naively, if you will, just started looking up opportunities like startup jobs in Nashville, entrepreneur job, like whatever it was. I was just kind of blitzing and trying to figure out these opportunities. And I would say at the time, even though we had gone through the course and even though we had kind of done our research, I still had a very like Shark Tank mindset of entrepreneurship, which in my mind is like, if you have a really cool idea, someone will want to buy it for you for $1 million, and you'll be rich by the time you're 22, and it'll be all good because you had this one good idea. And it's like, I've since learned, of course, that's not the case, but I think that naiveness allowed me just to like act like of course I can go just work for a startup and do anything, because it's like, this is how it works.
Don't know any better.
Exactly. And so I did that, and the EC was like a place that I quickly found was like kind of at the center of entrepreneurship in Nashville. And so I reached out like 0% knowing what it was or like what it meant or like the idea of a tech hub or whatever. I just sent in a cold email request and was like, hey, I kind of was involved with entrepreneurial things on my campus, and I love what y'all are doing. I will scrub the toilets. I'll crunch numbers.
Just let me get in.
Yeah, just let me get in. And just very, just by chance at the time, there was a spot at the front desk at the EC. It was an internship. It was full time, but it was contracted. It was hourly. It was like all the signs of them just saying like, we were kind of testing out this role.
Sure. Because
at the time they were really scrappy and they didn't even have a front desk person. So you would kind of walk in usually and just be like, wow. I guess hopefully I'll find the place where I'm supposed to be. Or they might have an intern sitting at the time.
Yeah.
part-time. And so this is the first time they're like a dedicated customer service person. And I just kind of fit the qualifications, and I just kind of was able to like slip in. And so I started that in August of 2015. All the while still like having Bond in my back pocket. And at the time,
Bond is your bracelet company.
Bond is the bracelet company, correct. So we're still going for it. And Cody is still in China at this point doing his job. And so whenever I started, it would look a lot like me working during the week and then calling Cody, 9 p.m. my time, 9 a.m. his time in China, just trying to like bolster the connections, figure out what we need to do, get the design right, get some extra money, that sort of thing. But what was really cool, so that's kind of when it kind of becomes two separate things, because like the EC now becomes this like crazy good opportunity, and Bond is just kind of on the precipice of like what it could become. Like, okay, we're like trying to push it forward as a company. We actually hadn't at that time in 2015 launched it as, we hadn't launched it at all. And so I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So the EC, kind of zeroing in on that, I was at the front desk, and it just became this amazing opportunity to network and to connect. And my advice to anyone that's like trying to get their start is like, just kind of humble yourself into a position that could look something like a front desk, part-time, contracted, hourly position, and just become the most curious that you can be. And so at the front desk, it became like a place where not only would you like, just an average entrepreneur coming in saying, what is this place? You'd have that. Then you'd have the next person to walk in the door, like a serial entrepreneur that sold their company for hundreds of $1 millions. And they're here to meet with someone, but you have them like captive for like 1 minute, and you can just ask them questions. Then you have the mayor come in, then you have the governor come in, and then all these like different people. And if you have like if you're just able to kind of humble yourself and just like ask questions and to learn, then you're going to set yourself up for success, because you're going to start to learn and you're going to be able to apply some of those principles into your own world. And so I'll go into the EC in a second. And so back to Bond, it had been, I was probably about 6 to 8 months into my stint at the EC, and it was going really well. And at that, like they had brought me on full-time salary, like I'm an employee now, and starting to like understand how the classes work and how the mentorship works and really get a good understanding. And so when I started talking to Cody, I'm like, dude, like I got this job, like it's crazy. It's this place where you come and you can work out of here, and there's like people that have sold companies that you can talk to and give you advice, and you can meet with marketing people and finance people, and you can take classes and connect with other entrepreneurs. And at the time, Cody's like, dude, this is like, what, like, that's awesome. I'm in China, and unfortunately, like, I'm not loving it over here. Like it's a really cool job, but everything that I thought it was going to be, the like lavish international business world had its perks, but it's also like you're kind of isolated. Like you don't have your friend community around you. Yeah. Like, and you can see very quickly how that can be a little isolating. Yeah. And so Cody was like, dude, like, what if I just moved to Nashville and like we try to get this company off the ground, and I can kind of find work here and there as needed, but we can kind of take a go at this. I'm like, let's do it. Like, yeah, exactly. So that was August of 2016. Cody moves back, and then one of our other friends from Western and from Kentucky actually moves down, and we all get a house together. And that's when Cody and I really start to like hit the ground running with Bond, and like trying to like get our first run of like full product and trying to make sales and getting into spots. And so what's crazy is that like, to kind of come full circle, is like this product, this thing that we were like, how can we continue to stay friends, has really truly been this glue that's like held us together, and that has like brought Cody to China and back so we can like try to figure this out together. And now like we still live together and we're still working on it. But I just always have to remind myself sometimes when it's hard and you're like trying to figure things out with a business, and some days and weeks and months are worse than others, but then you can always remember like it's something we're passionate about. It's something that like you're connected with people that you care about with. And for that reason alone, like it's worth doing.
It's worth doing.
Exactly.
I'm really glad that you introed with that story, because I want to talk about the Entrepreneur Center, because I think a lot of people listening will find value in there. Yeah. But I'm more interested in you and the experience that you've had with Bond, because I find, here's what I find. This is why I want to know about it.
Yeah.
For all of the things that I've been involved with, the thing that I think I've failed the most at was actual product based type companies where you have like a thing and you sell a thing and then you have to ship a thing to like an actual person. I don't do really well with that.
Right.
And so I started a t-shirt company a little while back, and I sold some of it and I still have a small percentage of it. But all in all, I mean, honestly, the amount of time I put into it compared to like what I got out of it, I don't think it worked out. It was a lot of good lessons learned. The thing that kept me going, though, and I really, really mean this, the thing that kept me going is there's some kind of rush that I would get when, you're not like getting a contract signed or you're not like getting a deal, like you're just selling a thing. And I would get some kind of rush about that. I don't even know how to explain it. I would have Shopify on my phone. Yeah. And when I would make a sale, I don't know if you have Shopify, but the app on your phone goes cha-ching. Right. And so every time I heard that noise,
it's like Pavlov's dog syndrome.
Basically, I think I would just get like hooked on the actual sales process of it. So I'm kind of leading into that one, and I don't even know if that's necessarily a question.
No, for sure.
I'm like fascinated by sort of the two different elements. There's kind of like the service industry, which is where I'm more into, definitely. Where you're like selling a service, and then there's like a product industry where you're selling a product.
Yeah. I think that's initially, we've always resonated with that belief too, with like, there's something about a physical product. I think that's why whenever we were sitting in that coffee shop when we were in college, we decided to like make something because it just made way more sense in our mind. Like that's what we grew up. We grew up selling candy bars out of our back pocket.
So you were used to that.
We grew up making Lego creations and selling them to people. And maybe that was just like, because we hadn't experienced like the world of startups and entrepreneurship yet, like truly to like build some sort of service or technology that you could sell, like what you're talking about. But we very much resonate with having a product, touching it, feeling it, showing it to someone, like seeing them wear it, like all these little things that really just, it's tangible. And I think for us, not to say that like we'll only ever do physical products in the future, but especially to like get things going, it just made much more sense in our mind to like a product costs X and it sells for X, and then you make sell X, sell Y, make Z. And so for us, it was maybe just like an easier way to enter into entrepreneurship and starting a company. But there's no better, like the highlights of the company, I would say thus far, and it wasn't even from my perspective, was Cody was either walking down the street and seeing someone with the bracelet, man. Like there's no like, and I like got just as excited as he was when you can just look and you see someone wearing it. You don't know who they are, right? It's not your friend. It's not your buddy. It's not your friend's buddy. Someone's like, yeah, I saw this and I thought it was cool. And so I bought it and now I'm wearing it. You're like, what? Yeah. It seems so crazy, or it doesn't seem that crazy, but it is that, especially that first time when you see that, it's like, man, someone saw enough value to spend their money on something that we made. It's a cool feeling. And the physical version of that, I think, really hits home.
I think so too. That was always the thing that I told myself that I wanted to do, because, you see the sales go out and you see people are tagging you on Instagram. And so like, that there's actual people out there wearing it. And then it would get to a point where like my friends would be walking down the street and they would see people wearing my shirts and send me pictures of them with like some stranger wearing a shirt. And I always said, especially to Juliana, God, like I just want to walk down the street and somebody wearing one of my shirts one day, and it never happened.
Yeah.
I wanted it so bad.
I know. Yeah. It's maybe you just need to be more strategic about where you go.
Just focus.
You need to start looking up the people's home address and start walking around their neighborhood, and hopefully you might see it one time.
I think that's really exciting, man. I liked what you talked about, and I don't know if this was actually, if I just kind of caught this in passing and maybe I misunderstood, but explain to everybody what the bracelets themselves actually represent, because you had mentioned something where like I can take some of mine off and like swap it with somebody else.
For sure. And
is that one of them?
Yeah, this is it. So, and interestingly enough, and this is the startup if there's probably a lot of lessons within this, but we've changed a lot of times as far as like what we set out to be and kind of what it is now, and even where we're going. And so we can talk about that, but it started as a way for someone to have a bracelet that means something to them. And so in this case, let's call it's the Titans, right? Like I'm a huge Titans fan. And so for those listening, it's sort of a navy blue outer bracelet with a reversible
like inner band
that kind of fits within it to kind of create like a stripe pattern, but it creates one singular bracelet.
Yeah.
So the goal when we initially started out was, okay, Jeremy's wearing his Titans bracelet, and then maybe Tim has, is Eagles bracelet. Exactly. Yeah. And so hopefully, I can learn a little bit about your fanhood with the Eagles, and you can learn a little bit about mine. And if we're civil fans and we enjoy the interaction, I want to like make that connection, I could take this piece out, trade with you. And so now I can still have a little bit of my like Titans fanhood, but then now I have Tim's story as an Eagles fan that I can then, when someone else asks me, what do those colors mean? I can say, well, this is because I'm a Titans fan. This is this dude, Tim, I met. He's really cool. He's an Eagles fan. And so that's what it set out to be. And honestly, it was probably somewhat about sports, but more so about like where you're from or an experience that means something to you, whether it's supporting breast cancer, whether it's these are the colors of my heritage. You'd be able to share a story about yourself and then learn from someone else. So we kind of went down that path for a long time. And also it might be worth mentioning, we also started a social kind of aspect of it where we would use proceeds from the bracelets to host pitch nights for high schoolers.
That's cool.
So a high schooler, and the reason that we did that was because that was a part of our story that like, if we didn't win those pitch competitions and get some money,
we never would have gotten started.
Yeah. So it resonated with us to host these pitch nights to give younger entrepreneurs the same opportunity. And we've ran 2 of those and they've been really awesome. But you get to this point where you kind of have to like step back, and we were like, man, this really isn't catching on like we thought. Like people aren't buying them like we thought. Explaining it to people's kind of weird.
It's a long story.
It's a long story just for a bracelet. And they're like, what? And then the bracelet itself doesn't really look like something that's like, really connecting people. And do middle schoolers care about each other's story if that's our target market? And so there's all these questions that we couldn't really answer. And so what we had to do was had to like kind of take some of my own medicine that we preach at the EC, which is talk to customers and like ask them the top 5 questions about the product.
Yeah.
And so we asked them, hey, how often do you trade with people? How often does someone ask you what it means? How often do you ask other people what it means? And about 9.9 times out of 10, they didn't do that. And they would buy their bracelet colors because they wanted their colors and they like doing that.
Yeah.
And so we kind of adapted to that and kind of rebranded more into game day bracelets. And so it would still function that you could trade if you wanted to, but the selling point that we were making is that you could now represent the Titans, whether they play a home game or when they go play away, you can flip it around and rock it like that.
Yeah.
And so it still has this sort of like, it's a story about who you are, but it's not as in the marketing and messaging, it's not as about connecting with people and that sort of thing. And then we kept the social aspect of it, the pitch competitions. And so we've kind of gone down that path, and this has been like a year or so probably since we've made that switch. And it's still with the pitch competition and the messaging, it still just hasn't really like taken roots like we've wanted it to. And so we're actually currently in another kind of full rebranding process where we're kind of putting a lot of things on the chopping block and saying, okay, how can we really zero in on a messaging that works, a target audience that makes sense, and a social aspect, because we've always kind of wanted to have some sort of social aspect of it, because at that point it's just a bracelet.
Yeah.
And having a social aspect of it that really like fits with the story of the bracelet and who it's aimed to serve. So we're in the planning stages of that right now, and we'll probably do a full relaunch of it, but we've constantly kind of had these like classic entrepreneurial lessons along the way where you have to like take a step back, ask customers, and learn and make a change from it.
Yeah. I've had, I don't know, 1 million of those so far.
Yeah. And it's humbling, right? Because you're like, what? Like this thing that we decided that this was going to be it, and dang it, like it didn't work. You just kind of have to bounce back quick and say like, that's okay. Like we're meant to try something and fail. And that means that like you're kind of getting more you're getting closer to the right thing.
Sure.
But it's still, you kind of have to humble yourself and say, okay, well, that didn't work, and let's try something different.
I really struggle a lot with knowing where that line is.
Yeah.
You try something, you give it a shot for a while, it kind of takes on a little bit of catch, but it's not quite the catch that like you want it to. So there's always this, probably the biggest thing that I struggle with all the different websites that I've built, and some do better than others, and is that deciding factor where, is this working? If it is, how far do I take it? If it's not, do I know if I'm at the spot where I need to just push it a little harder, or if I need to pivot? And I swear, I mean, I have like a really active mind as it is. So I'm always kind of thinking of ways that I can do it better. But that question in my head probably takes up more space than anything.
Right.
And I'll give you a little example. I just started this website. Well, not just, this is probably a perfect example, because this is the one thing that I've tried in comparison to the success it's had, and like the ratio with the amount of effort I put into it, it's like the furthest, Right. So it's this website called Boca Digest, because I came from Boca.
Cool.
Boca Raton in South Florida. And all it is like an events calendar, because in Boca, it's a pretty big city and there's a decent amount of young people, but there's really no, like, the city itself isn't very techy. So when everybody goes out, there was no like real list of events and places that you could find things to do on the weekend. So I found this WordPress plugin called the Events Calendar, and it was so cool, man. Like, I got so excited because this plugin API'd into Facebook, so that if you could find Facebook pages that were posting events, like a happy hour, like a restaurant, or whatever the case may be, you could just copy the URL of that Facebook page, and then every morning, all of the Facebook pages that you put into the plugin would import all the events that they had. So the more pages that you had, every morning it would import all of them. So every day there are more and more pages of content being put on this site, which was all like super relevant. So I would take 10 minutes every morning, research a bunch of new Facebook pages in the area, and even like the surrounding areas that were hosting events. And before I knew it, the thing was just like exploding, because it was the one place where you could just go to with a super user-friendly type interface, where it's just a calendar,
right.
So you just click on the day, and these are all those events that are going on in the day. And wouldn't you know, as soon as I start getting excited about it, the whole Russia thing happened, and Facebook kind of bugged out with their security, and they killed the API. So now there's no connection that allows like my website to pull data from Facebook anymore. And I was so bummed out, because this idea of having, just some kind of like magazine type content site of like a real localized community, I've been trying for probably 2.5 years and just failing over and over again. I'm like, why the fuck isn't this catching on like I want it to? And I finally found like this little angle, this perfect angle. And right when I did, the API got killed. So you can ask Jules. I complain about it all the time, because I was just like, I can't believe that happened. I can't believe that happened. And didn't quite, it stayed in the back of my mind, but there was also this other part of me that said like, I'll figure something out. Like the idea is there. I don't quite know what it is. And so just 2 days ago, because that happened, the plugin company made it so that since they can't pull from Facebook anymore, they made it so that you can pull from meetup.com. So now I'm back, like now I'm back in business. But then there's another side where just the amount of information on meetup.com isn't even close to the amount of stuff on Facebook. Like if any bar or EC or any organization, really, if you're throwing events, you're going to make events on Facebook, and that's just the first thing you're going to do. So now I'm at this weird crossroads. It's like, it's kind of cool, but I'm not going to have nearly the amount of content and just the amount of relevant content, like the stuff that people would post on Facebook really matters. Like those happy hours, especially. So I give you that entire story just to kind of relate to you, where like I'm at that spot where, what do you do? Do I like keep grinding through this current like little dilemma that I have just to see what happens? Or do you just kind of call it a loss?
Yeah.
So
it's like tough, man. And I think I think there's kind of two informative things that you can do. One is just like listen to your gut, and I feel like it'll work itself out eventually. Like if you just if you're not feeling good about it, then I would assume you probably shouldn't go down that track. And Maybe. If you are, then explore it. That's probably like my more like wishful thinking that could be the case. And then the other thing is seek out people that can give you that sort of expertise and that sort of, hey, I have been there where I've had to change, and here's the 3 questions you should ask yourself if you're going to continue to do it, and 3 questions you should ask yourself if you should go a different direction, and finding someone that's gone through that themselves. And that has like, every time I'm faced with like a difficult decision, whether it's something like, do we go this route or do we take a step back, or, should we make a change to the design or should we leave it? Like any of those tough questions, it's usually been our method is to go out and ask someone that's like been there historically, because they probably have a guidebook to help you get through that.
Is that okay? That little piece of advice that you just said seems like sort of a practicality type lesson that you learned from your experience at the Entrepreneur Center.
Yeah.
I think that's like a weakness of mine, is that everything I've done, I've kind of just like bullied my way through. Yeah,
but look, I bet it's paid off up until this point too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very proud of everything that I've done, but there's the other side of me that thinks like, how much time did I spend on like dead end routes, just to try to find my way. Yep. And so I think that's kind of like a perfect little segue to learn a little bit more about like why programs like the Entrepreneur Center provide so much value, because especially if you're just starting off, I mean, there's like the entrepreneur mentality, which kind of gets on my nerves a little bit with like hustle, grind. But I think that's really terrible fucking advice, honestly. I think working hard is important, but I think
smarter is better.
Yeah, I think working smart is better. And I think that the biggest thing that I see with entrepreneurs isn't so much, it's they get sick of doing it, because it's not like, it's only gratifying once you hit a certain point. The rest of it is like really not really that gratifying. So I think that having a resource like that where you can actually just ask practical questions to people that have been there before, and you can steer away from, the kind of advice that quote gurus on the internet like to tell you, where it's just like, just hustle, stay up all night, work,
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And I think that guidance is really important. And then from what I can tell, that's the mission of the Entrepreneur Center, is to really give that kind of guidance and networking.
Yeah. You nailed it. So I think when you look at the history of the EC, of the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, and I'll refer to it as the EC.
Yeah.
And so it started in 2009. That's like when it officially became an organization. And the interesting to know about the history of it was that it was born out of the city, the chambers, the business leaders coming together and saying, hey, there's a lot of entrepreneurs going other places and not starting their businesses in Nashville because they're not getting the right support that they need. So how can we actually pull together, the right tools that they need to be successful? And so what it started out was just a one room in the Chamber of Commerce, a website where you could go online and like maybe download a couple of business models and schedule a meeting with one of the 10 advisors that we had at the time.
Cool.
And so that's what it started out was. It was more so about connecting someone with a business expert. And so when you kind of like zoom forward and you're looking at the sort of entrepreneurial support landscape now, it's a lot about like huge buildings, huge hubs where people are getting to connect, and it's kind of all central to one location, which kind of, that's where the EC has landed. But when you look at the core of where we started, it was from the beginning, from the jump, about getting someone connected to someone that's done it before.
Yeah.
And there's hard data around, you're so much more likely to find success when you have a successful mentor kind of blazing the path with you.
Absolutely.
To kind of point out, don't do that, do that, maybe do that. I don't know. You're going to have to make a decision on your own, but here's my advice. It's like 90% of, exited companies had like a successful mentor walking with them through that path. And so that's always been the sort of temple of the EC, is having a group of experts, people that have sold companies, people that are, titans in their industry, or, leaders in their sector, to support entrepreneurs. It's an amazing thing that all these individuals also do it on a volunteer basis, and something that I kind of had to wrap my mind around, right? When I was coming into the EC as a fresh faced college kid, just like, oh, startups are cool, like Tim Ferriss, all that stuff. And getting an understanding of like, wow, like these individuals could be billing $500 an hour, but they choose instead to help an entrepreneur because they probably had someone doing the same for them. And so, you know, the EC started as just a website, and I think in those 10 mentors, and then we really tried to like grow and eat our own medicine as we go. So it's like kind of moving to the next peg once you've kind of proved the concept and can kind of move on to the next stage. So from that, we got some funding. We're a nonprofit and moved into our first spot, which is down on Broadway, which was like more of a modest sort of building while we started to build out the programs and add more mentors and get a little bit more, you know, mature in our offerings to the entrepreneurs. And then it's about saying, okay, entrepreneurs, like as your needs continue to evolve and as the types of companies you're starting change, how can we adapt and make relevant programs and offerings and support? And so as we're continuing to do that, we say this spot's not going to be big enough. And so we move to where we're at now on Peabody Street, downtown.
Super great building, by the way.
It's really cool. It's like these old trolley barns, really rustic vibe. And so now we're at a place where that center is really now can hold the actual activity that we were meant to do, which is offering classes, which is to have a cool workspace where our, you know, entrepreneurs can work next to each other and find community within themselves in a really collaborative space, but still the key of that being the mentor program. And it's 250 people deep at this point.
Wow.
And they kind of spread out into most of the things that we do. So of course we just have just like the mentor program where you go and you can meet with an advisor one-on-one, and you can do that on a recurring basis. You meet with some of the people, you know, recurring, and then you might also meet an expert one-off as you need it. But then what's really cool is that they also teach a lot of the classes that we host, and they lead a lot of the workshops. The mentors do. So it's the best way I can say it is like, you don't come to the EC to meet with Jeremy, meet with me about like guidance on your business. I'm just really good at emailing the right mentor so that you guys can have a conversation in a safe space about, hey, I'm freaking out about this decision, or I'm not exactly sure what to do here. And someone that's been there before can go, it's okay. Like, I get that. It is super stressful. I know. Here's the 3 things that I thought about when I was going through that decision, and here's where it landed me. Maybe for you, it might be a little bit different because this is this, but generally this
somebody
is
with some perspective.
Exactly. And so I think like when you're talking about the Entrepreneur Center, the thing I always like to highlight is that it's led by a community of successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, and just great volunteers in the community that see the value in that and want to give that back.
I think that was I found the EC by researching volunteer stuff in Nashville, because I've only been here 6 or 7 weeks at this point, and it feels like an exploding city. I think everybody can basically figure that out at this point. But what am I getting at? You had mentioned the volunteer type thing. And in my quote short career in running a business, being an entrepreneur, whatever, it's really a kind of little society where people are always willing to help other people out. And you wouldn't think it that way, because I would assume that there's a stigma of entrepreneurs where it's very much like need more, more sales, whatever. But there's this weird kind of backwards. I wouldn't even say backwards. It's just a juxtaposition how you get so much more. The more you give, the more you get.
Yeah.
And especially with that kind of thing, because like I love doing this podcast and talking to people, because I learn so much from listening to other people and their stories, you know, just even some of the things that you've said, like it hits me and I think, oh, wow, like I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for a lot of these mentors, myself included, because I asked you about that before and I don't think I ever followed through, but I'm sure that the experience that they get from it is just as gratifying for them as it probably would be for the mentee, I guess you would say, for
Absolutely.
the mentee entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Do you talk to any of those people like on a first name basis? You have relationships with the mentors?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because, and the other value of that beside, apart from or opposite of getting that help online is it's in person. You develop real relationships. These are real people that not only are getting guidance about their business, but they know personal stuff about you. And so yeah, like having them in person there is such a key value, and that they know Nashville and that they value that.
Has there been any tangible data that the Entrepreneur Center has kept local businesses and money in the city?
For sure. And I can't like relay it right off the top of my head, but yeah, it's as far as jobs created, as far as capital generated, as far as revenue generated for the city. We have a lot of that data, and it's incredible to, and it's not just the EC. It's not like saying, oh, the EC created it. We're just a part of supporting those entrepreneurs that are doing that cool work, and that it's cool that we have relationships with them, that we can gather that information and then work closely with the city. And I think the one that we get the most excited about is jobs created. And the one I particularly get the most excited about of trying to track and understand and support, because like that's real jobs. That's like real people. Yeah. And it's
affecting their lives.
Exactly. When you look at that data, sometimes you'd be like, okay, so created 250 jobs in the last, 5 years, and we're trying to get to 500, in the next 3. It's like, whoa. Like that's 250 people that now have the ability to work and sustain and provide for a family because someone had an idea and valued the right resources and sought it out and figured it out and problem solved their way to like building something that can do that. Like it's crazy. When you think about like that many people, it means something, right?
For sure.
That's like and that's what, whenever I'm like, like having a rough day or like super busy and just like, man, I just had like had to do all these emails, whatever, all the stupid stuff we can complain about. When I try to zoom back and be like, whenever you talk to an entrepreneur that said, I just hired 2 people last month, it's like, whoa, like that's 2 people's lives that now they can buy a house because this one person took a chance and made something happen. So that wasn't really answer to your question, but whenever I talk about jobs created, it's a really like cool metric to understand in the track.
Because you're having an effect.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're having an effect. So let me kind of say real quick, thanks again so much for coming in here and talking to me. Like I'm really impressed with like how articulate you are when you speak. That's one of the things I've actually been sitting here trying to learn from you, because another reason why I like this podcast is because I'm a really good writer and I'm a pretty good talker, but I'm really trying to get better at not being like so choppy, like, because I think so fast and I have to slow down when I speak, and you speak really, really well. I think that's going to work well for you, especially in sales in your career. But so with that, where do you personally want to go to? Is your mission with your bracelet company? Is your mission with being involved in the EC? Do you see your bracelet company kind of turning into something else at some point? Like what's your year? Everyone's got like a year in their mind. I want to hear about where you're going. I don't even know if you've kind of said this out loud yet. So now's your shot.
Yeah, that's a great question. But first, thank you for having me, and thank you for being someone that like comes into a city and like is looking to learn, is looking to take advantage, is looking to highlight stories. Yeah. People can kind of come into a city and not take advantage of it, and then want to complain about, oh, like there's not a lot of opportunity and not a lot of this and this and this. But it shows that if you just ask, a lot of times the answer is yes. Hey, want to be on a podcast? Yeah, sure. And it literally can just look like this, and it's amazing. And now you're getting to learn. And so I resonate with the curiosity, the intentionality, and with the selflessness of just saying, hey, like, let's just learn. I'm going to ask questions. And it goes back to when I was at the front desk and I heard someone really smart tell me this. It's always try to be the dumbest person in the room. Because when you're the dumbest person in the room, it means you stand the most to gain. Absolutely. From a learning perspective. Yeah. And so not saying that you're doing that, but saying that by just asking questions and to come in and just seeing, hey, like would you do this? A lot of times it's yes. And then you can grow so much. So thank you for doing that and for coming to Nashville and
my pleasure.
Trying to figure that stuff out and having me on. So what is Jeremy's plan? That's a great question. With Bond, ultimately, man, it's been in the name of the company, bond.com, BOHND. It's all about learning. Of course, we want to take it to a place that's sustainable, that allows us to have our own salary. So as of right now, we're still doing this part-time. My roommate Cody has a job. I have a job, and we're kind of figuring this out as much as we can. It's been such a learning opportunity, and it will continue to be a learning opportunity. And it's our first stab at forming a true company. And so wherever that goes, we're not exactly sure. Of course, we're kind of trying to blaze the path to we sustain our own careers, and we figure out something right within the market to where we can kind of make a difference and make an impact with that social piece, and just with our, like, we want to create financial sustainability for ourselves so that we can have a little bit of freedom to like explore what that next opportunity is.
Yeah. See where it takes you.
Exactly. So if I'd be lying if I said I thought Bond was going to be like my lifelong endeavor, but I think it's going to help us find the next one. And that's really what it's going to be about, is taking all the learnings, trying to grow this to a point. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but taking that and exploring what that next path is.
Cool.
And as far as the EC goes, I really love that place, man. It's like been such a great place to meet people. It's honestly, I moved to Nashville 3 years ago, started that job. It's the reason why I love the city so much, because of the individuals that I get to interact with.
I bet.
A lot of my best friends are a result of working at the Entrepreneur Center. And so it's really scary to give that up, or like to think about a day that like I won't be there every day, getting to learn and be around cool people and to do the work that we get to do. So if I like put those two together, I think the goal would be at some point for me to have my own business, whether it's by myself or with someone else, and being able to, continue to support the Entrepreneur Center in some way whenever that day comes where I have found that sustainability and the ability to do that comfortably. And so that's the path that we're trying to figure out, is how can we, we both love the idea of being able to just work for ourselves and to create something of value that people enjoy. And so that's kind of what we're aiming to get at. And so I don't know how it'll ebb and flow to get there.
That's great though.
Yeah.
I personally, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I've always found that if I'm at a spot where I'm like 70% sure where I want to go and 30% unsure enough, that 30% is good, because it leaves you kind of flexibility,
right,
to take whatever comes at you.
Yeah.
There's real hard, fast, like plans, what's the expression? You make a plan and God laughs, right?
Yeah.
It never fucking works.
Yeah, correct.
Like I got a plan. I got everything mapped out for months and months and months. And by like the first month, something happens where you didn't see it coming, and you got to adjust to it. So I think that you're spot on with having a direction, the road that you want to go down, and you got room for the road to meander.
Yeah.
Okay. So last but not least, take this time. You said bond.com.
Yeah.
I don't know the website to the EC. Where can people find you personally?
Yeah.
How can they get in touch with you? Like,
sure.
Shameless plug right here.
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
So Bond is bond.com, and that's BOHND.com. And just one quick funny story about why it's spelled that way, and it's very entrepreneurially. It's an entrepreneur's story. Is that it was originally BOND like Bond bracelets, BOND like how it should be spelled. And we were just going down that path, and it was just kind of like, yeah, sure, like that's the name of the company. By the time we got to the EC, the attorney mentor that we met with was like, yeah, you definitely. There's like 3 other Bond bracelet type of companies with that name. You can't be called that. And so Cody and I, for like 3 hours, had this naming session, because the shitty thing is that we had already had the B logo like embossed in all the bracelets. So we're like, okay, it has to start with the B, and it has to resonate with with what it does, right? It's bond because it creates bond between people, and the bond of the bracelets forms together. So we just sat there for like 3 hours, like bamboozled bracelets or bongo bracelets, and literally had like a list of 100 names. And we were just like, oh, we got to stop thinking about this. Let's take a break. And on the way out, I was like, man, we should just call it bond bracelets and spell it like your middle name. And so Cody's middle name is Bohn, Cody
no way.
Bond Hutchins. And we kind of said that, and we kind of looked at each other like,
yeah, let's do it.
yeah, like why not? And so like you think about Nike, like all these other companies have weird spellings. You don't think about it now. And so we were like, from that point, we were just like, all right, BOHND, we're Bond bracelets. And so it's one of those things where you kind of like, that's why I seek that guidance early on, so that you're not like starting a company and then having to go back and figure something out retroactively. But so yeah, bond.com with an H. And then the EC, the Entrepreneur Center's website is just ec.co.
That's right.
And the thing I'll mention about the Entrepreneur Center is that it's a great place for entrepreneurs to go, but it's also a great place for anyone to go that's interested in entrepreneurship, the startup life, working around that sort of environment.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of membership and opportunities to get plugged in, whether you're a corporate or whether you're a freelancer or whether you just work for a startup remotely. And so I think that's the biggest misconception, is that you have to just be a founder to take advantage of that community. But I think the awesome thing about the community is it's made up of a lot of different types of people. Yeah. Of course, we do, if you are that entrepreneur, we do have very specific programs and classes and workshops that are designed to progress, you as a startup and as a founder. But if you're hearing about what we're talking about, you're like, well, I'm not a founder, so I can't take advantage of it. There's a lot of different ways that people can come and get plugged in. And so
it's an open workspace as well.
Exactly. Workspace, desk options, classes, happy hours, lunches, all sorts of ways. My ultimate job is to make sure that people are connected, highlighted, and are around their type of community. Yeah. And so if that sounds like you and you want to get plugged into that, you very much can. And you can just go to our website and fill in a contact request form, and it'll eventually make its way to me. And yeah, I'd say that's cool. That's the best plug I can do.
Great, man. Thanks again so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Really appreciated you having
on. Of course, yeah.
Come back anytime.
It's a pleasure.
You live right down the street.
Yep. East Nasty, baby.
Yeah, East Nashville. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the podcast. Please do me a favor, leave me a rating, and give me a subscription on iTunes. It's the best thing you can do to support the show. Jeremy, thanks again. Talk to y'all next week.
Deuces. That's my signature sign off. Dude, that's great. Yeah.